Unaware he was a billionaire, the maid's daughter approached the lonely man. "Sir," she asked, "would you like to be my dance partner?" Her simple question shocked everyone in the room. He was a billionaire, lost in a grief that had settled on him like dust. She was a 10-year-old girl, the daughter of a maid who only saw a man who looked lonely. In a gymnasium divided by wealth and judgment, she ignored the stairs and crossed the floor. She did not know he was a billionaire. She only knew he was alone. With one simple question, "Would you be my dance partner?" she offered a moment of simple, human kindness. She had no idea this one dance would ignite a cruel retaliation and unleash a power she couldn't imagine. And before we start, let me know where you are joining from today in the comments. Now, I hope you enjoy the story. He stood alone, a ghost in a gymnasium full of laughter. Robert Walsh, a man who owned skyscrapers, looked lost under paper streamers. He was here to sign a check, a duty he dreaded, but he did not expect a 10-year-old girl to change his life. The air in the Lincoln Elementary Gymnasium was thick with the smell of floor wax and pizza. Brightly colored drawings of turkeys and pilgrims, leftovers from Thanksgiving, were still taped to the walls. A father-daughter dance was in full swing. Fathers in clumsy suits twirled daughters in shiny dresses. In the corner, near the lukewarm punch bowl, Robert Walsh checked his watch. 6:17 p.m. He hated these events. They were loud, they were messy. They reminded him of a life he no longer had. He was here as the guest of honor, the Walsh, from the Walsh Family Foundation that had funded the school's new library. The principal had insisted he make an appearance. "It will be good for the community, Mr. Walsh," the principal had said. Robert just felt empty. He adjusted the cuff of his gray cashmere sweater. He felt like a fraud. He had built an empire in logistics and shipping. He could move cargo across oceans, but he could not move himself out of the grief that had settled on him like dust. Across the gym, 10-year-old Emily watched the dancers. She had blonde hair, cut short and practical. Her dress was simple, a light blue fabric that her mother had sewn herself. It was pretty, but it was not shiny. It did not have the lace or sequins that the other girls wore. Emily did not mind. She was looking for her own partner. Her mother, Margaret, stood by the gymnasium doors, watching her daughter. Margaret's hands were clasped tight. She was a proud woman, but she was tired. She worked as a maid for the Peterson family, one of the wealthiest families in the county. She recognized the look of wealth. She saw it standing by the punch bowl. Margaret knew that man. Everyone did. Robert Walsh. His face was on the cover of magazines at the checkout stand. "Emily, honey," Margaret whispered, pulling her daughter back for a moment. "Maybe we should just watch for a while." Emily looked up at her mother. "But it's a dance, Mama." "I know, it's just... be good." Margaret glanced nervously at another woman across the room. That woman was Mrs. Peterson. She was here with her daughter, Chloe. Mrs. Peterson wore a sharp black dress and a look of permanent disapproval. She saw Margaret and Emily, and her lip curled just slightly. She leaned over to another mother. "They let everyone in tonight, it seems," Mrs. Peterson whispered, loud enough to be heard. Margaret's face flushed. She put a protective hand on Emily's shoulder. Emily did not hear the cruel remark. She was focused on the man by the punch bowl. He looked lonely. He looked the way she felt sometimes. Her grandfather, a man who had earned medals for bravery in a war long ago, had always told her one thing. "Courage isn't about being strong, Em. It's about seeing someone who needs help and helping them, even if you're scared." The man in the gray sweater looked like he needed help. He looked like he needed a friend. "I'll be right back, Mama," Emily said. "Emily, wait!" Margaret hissed. But Emily was already moving. She walked with purpose. She ignored the other dancers. She ignored the giggling girls. She walked straight across the polished wooden floor. Robert Walsh saw her coming. He assumed she was lost, or perhaps wanted him to buy a raffle ticket. He prepared to be polite but firm. Mrs. Peterson saw it too. Her eyes went wide with disbelief. "What is that child doing?" she muttered. Emily stopped right in front of the billionaire. She had to tilt her head all the way back to look him in the eye. His eyes were gray and very sad. She did not know he was a billionaire. She did not know he owned the building she was standing in. She only knew he was alone. Emily took a small breath. She remembered her grandfather's words. "Sir," she said, her voice clear and small, "would you be my dance partner?" The music seemed to dip. The chatter around them faded. Robert Walsh froze. He stared at the small blonde girl. Her expression was completely serious. There was no joke, no trick, just a simple question. You want to dance with me?" Robert asked. His voice was rough. He had not truly spoken to anyone in hours. "Yes, sir," Emily said. "The sign says, father-daughter dance." "I don't have a father here, and you're standing all by yourself. People shouldn't be by themselves at a dance." Robert's throat tightened. It had been years since anyone had spoken to him with such simple, honest kindness. In his world, everyone wanted something. They wanted his money. They wanted his influence. They wanted his name. This girl just wanted a dance partner. He looked over her head. He saw Mrs. Peterson watching, her face a mask of pinched judgment. He saw Margaret by the door, wringing her hands, looking terrified. Then he looked back down at Emily. "I am not," Robert said slowly, "a very good dancer." Emily smiled. "That's okay. I can teach you. The trick is to not step on the other person's feet." A small, rusty sound escaped Robert's chest. It was a laugh. He had not laughed in a long time. It felt strange. "Well," Robert said, setting his plastic cup of punch on the table, "I suppose I cannot turn down my first lesson." He held out his hand. "My name is Robert." "I'm Emily," she said. She placed her small hand in his large one. The DJ, seeing the interaction, made a quick choice. He faded out the fast-paced pop song. He put on a slow, gentle waltz. Emily led him onto the floor. The other fathers and daughters shuffled, moving aside to make room. A circle formed around the tall, sad man and the small, brave girl. Robert was stiff. He was awkward. He moved like a man who had forgotten how to be gentle. "You're supposed to put your other hand on my back, sir," Emily instructed patiently. "Oh, right." Robert awkwardly placed his hand on her shoulder blade. "No, lower," she said. He moved his hand. "Okay, now just step when I step," Emily said. They began to move. It was not a dance. It was a clumsy shuffle. Robert looked down at her blonde hair. Emily looked down at his expensive, polished shoes. "You're stepping on my feet," Robert noted. "No," Emily said, concentrating hard. "You're stepping on my feet." "Ah, my apologies." They found a rhythm, a simple 1-2-3. Robert's posture, usually rigid with stress, began to soften. The cold emptiness in his chest felt warmer. He thought of his wife, Claire. She had loved to dance. She had tried to teach him, right in their kitchen. "You are hopeless, Rob," she would laugh. "You are hopeless," Emily said, looking up at him. Robert stopped. "I'm sorry?" "I mean," Emily corrected herself, "you just need more practice." "My wife used to say the same thing," Robert said, his voice quiet. "Is she here?" Emily asked, looking around the gym. Robert's smile faded. "No, she's not." "Oh," Emily said. "My grandpa's not here either. He's in heaven. Mama says he's dancing with angels now." Robert looked at her. "Your grandpa sounds like a wonderful man." "He was a hero," Emily said proudly. "He saved his whole team in the war. He always told me to be brave, even when I'm scared." "Were you scared to ask me to dance?" Robert asked. Emily nodded. "A little. You're very tall." Robert chuckled again. The sound was richer this time. "Well, I am honored, Emily. Thank you for your courage." As the song reached its end, the gymnasium was quiet. The other families had stopped to watch. Mrs. Peterson was fuming. "This is ridiculous," she whispered to her friend. "He's making a fool of himself." With her. Margaret, however, was crying. She watched her daughter. She watched the billionaire. And she saw something she had not seen in a long time. She saw simple, human kindness. The music faded. Robert and Emily stopped shuffling. The gym was silent for a beat. Then a single teacher started clapping. Another parent joined. Within seconds, the entire gymnasium erupted in applause. Robert looked around, startled by the noise. Emily just beamed. "See?" she said, tugging on his sweater. "I told you I could teach you." Robert gently released Emily's hand. He felt a strange reluctance to let go. He looked over at Margaret, who was standing stiffly by the door, her face pale. "Your mother is waiting for you," Robert said to Emily. "Okay." Emily gave him a quick, bright smile. "Thank you for the dance, sir. You did very well for a beginner." "The honor was all mine, Miss Emily." Emily turned and ran back to her mother, her simple blue dress fluttering. Margaret grabbed her daughter's hand, gave Robert a quick, terrified nod, and pulled Emily toward the exit. As they left, the music started again, a loud, cheerful pop song. The spell was broken. The other families resumed their dancing. Robert Walsh stood alone once more, but he did not feel alone. He felt shaken. He felt awake. He turned to leave, his duty as a donor more than fulfilled. As he walked toward the same exit, he passed Mrs. Peterson's table. Her name was Beth Peterson. Her husband's company did occasional business with Walsh Logistics. They were small fish in his large pond. "Mr. Walsh," Beth Peterson said, her voice sharp and sugary. She stood up, blocking his path. Her daughter, Chloe, stood beside her, looking bored. "Mrs. Peterson," Robert said with a cool nod. "What a spectacle," Beth said, her smile tight. "It was so charitable of you to dance with that girl. Her mother works for me, you know, cleans my house." She said, "cleans my house," as if it were a disease. Robert's gaze, which had been warm moments before, turned to ice. He was a man who negotiated billion-dollar deals. He knew how to spot aggression. "She is a charming girl," Robert said evenly. "You must be very proud to know her mother." Beth Peterson's smile faltered. She had expected him to laugh it off, to agree that the girl was beneath him. She did not expect him to defend the child. "Well," Beth stammered, "I just worry. We must maintain certain standards. We wouldn't want children getting the wrong idea, thinking they can just bother important people." Robert looked down at her. He was a tall man, and in that moment, he seemed to fill the gymnasium. "The only wrong idea I see," Robert said, his voice dangerously quiet, "is a person who believes kindness has standards. The girl wasn't bothering me. She was saving me." He did not wait for a reply. He stepped around her. "Chloe," he said, nodding to the young girl, "that is a lovely dress." Chloe, who had been ignored all night, blushed. "Thank you, sir." Beth Peterson's face turned a dull, angry red. She watched him walk away. He had not just dismissed her, he had humiliated her. He had taken the maid's side. She turned her cold eyes toward the door where Margaret and Emily had left. "We will see about standards," Beth muttered. The drive home for Margaret and Emily was quiet. Their small, rattling car was cold. The heater had broken last winter. Margaret gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles were white. "Did I do something wrong, Mama?" Emily finally asked from the passenger seat. She was still wearing her coat from the dance. Margaret's heart broke. She reached over and squeezed Emily's knee. "No, baby. You did nothing wrong. You were perfect." "He was a nice man," Emily said, looking out the window. "He looked sad." "Yes, honey. He is. He's also very, very powerful." "What does powerful mean?" Margaret sighed. How could she explain it? "It means he's like a big ship, Emily. And we are very small boats. You have to be careful not to get too close or his waves can sink you, even if he doesn't mean to." Emily thought about this. "But he needed a partner, Mama." "I know." Margaret pulled into the parking lot of their small apartment complex. It was on the other side of town from the Petersons' sprawling mansion. "Mama?" Emily said as they got out of the car. Yes? Mrs. Peterson looked angry. Margaret stopped, her key in the apartment door. She closed her eyes. Yes, I saw that too. Why? Some people, Emily, Margaret said, pushing the door open, don't like it when the boats get near the ships. They like everyone to stay in their proper place. That's silly, Emily said, walking inside. It's not a ship. It's just a dance floor. Margaret watched her daughter go to her room. Yes, baby, she whispered to herself. If only they knew that. She went to the kitchen and put the kettle on for tea. Her hands were shaking. Mrs. Peterson was not a kind employer. She was picky. She was demanding. She paid late. But it was a job. It paid for this apartment. It paid for Emily's food. And tomorrow morning, Margaret had to be at the Peterson house at 8 a.m. sharp to clean up after their pre-holiday party. She had a very bad feeling about tomorrow. Robert Walsh did not go home. His sprawling, empty mansion on the hill felt more like a tomb than a home. Instead, he had his driver take him to the office. The Walsh Tower was dark, save for the security lights in the lobby. He took his private elevator to the penthouse floor. His office was vast, with a glass wall overlooking the entire city. He did not turn on the lights. He stood at the window, looking at the thousands of lights sparkling below. Each light was a home, a family, a life. He had all of this, and he had felt nothing. Until tonight. He thought of the girl, Emily. He was a hero. He always told me to be brave. Robert had not felt brave in a long time, not since Claire died. He had just felt busy. He built his company. He made more money. He funded libraries. But he was hollow. He went to his desk and turned on a small lamp. He pulled out a piece of paper. He had a team of private investigators on retainer. He used them to vet business partners. He used them to find vulnerabilities in his competitors. He picked up his phone and dialed his head of security, a man named George. Mr. Walsh. George's voice was instantly awake. It was 9 p.m. A call from the boss at this hour was rare. George, Robert said, I have a name for you. Emily, 10 years old, blonde hair. Her mother is Margaret, last name unknown. Margaret works as a maid for the Peterson family, Beth and Tom Peterson. There was a silence on the line. Sir? George asked, confused. Is this a threat? No, George. It is the opposite of a threat. Robert looked out the window. I want to know everything about them, but I want it done quietly. No one sees you. No one hears you. I don't want them scared. I want to know who they are. Of course, Mr. Walsh. A background check on Margaret and her daughter, Emily. One more thing, Robert said. The girl, Emily. She mentioned her grandfather. She said he was a war hero. He paused, remembering the girl's proud expression. Find out who he was. Robert hung up the phone. He sat in the dark for a long time. The small blonde girl had opened a door he had kept locked for years, and he was finally, cautiously, ready to look inside. The next morning, the sky was a flat, unforgiving gray. Margaret woke before her alarm. She had not slept. She had spent the night staring at the cracks in her ceiling, listening to the drip of a neighbor's leaky faucet. She made Emily oatmeal, her movements mechanical. Are you going to Mrs. Peterson's today, Mama? Emily asked, swinging her legs under the small kitchen table. Yes, honey. Margaret forced a smile. You be good for Mrs. Gable next door after school. I'll be home around 5. Can I show Mrs. Peterson the picture I drew? Emily held up a piece of paper. It was a crayon drawing of the dance. A very tall stick figure in a gray sweater held the hand of a small stick figure in a blue dress. They were both smiling. Margaret's heart clenched. No, baby. Not today. Mrs. Peterson, she's very busy. She kissed Emily goodbye at the school bus stop. The bus pulled away, and Margaret was left alone in the cold. She wrapped her thin coat tighter and began the long walk to the wealthy side of town. The Peterson house was a modern mansion of glass and white stone. It looked like a beautiful, sterile box. Margaret let herself in through the side door, as instructed. She clocked in on a small keypad in the mudroom. 8:01 a.m., 1 minute late. She winced. Beth Peterson checked the log. The house was quiet, but it was a heavy quiet. The party from the night before had left a mess. Glasses, sticky with dried punch, were on every surface. Crumbs were ground into the expensive white rug. Margaret got to work. She was meticulous. She was thorough. She needed this job. She was scrubbing a red wine stain in the living room when Beth Peterson entered. Margaret! Margaret startled, nearly dropping her scrub brush. She stood up, wiping her hands on her apron. "Good morning, Mrs. Peterson." Beth was dressed in a silk robe, holding a cup of coffee. She did not look rested. She looked sharp and angry, like a bird of prey. "I see you're late," Beth said. Her voice was light, but her eyes were not. "I'm sorry, ma'am." "The bus was—" "Don't," Beth cut her off. "I don't care about the bus. I care about my house." Beth walked around the room, inspecting Margaret's work. She ran a finger along a bookshelf. "You missed a spot." Margaret looked. There was no dust. "I'm sorry. I'll get it." "You will." Beth took a sip of her coffee. "You seem distracted, Margaret. Did you have a late night? At the dance?" Margaret's blood went cold. "No, ma'am. We left early." "Yes, I saw." Beth turned to face her. "You know, Margaret, I am a very generous woman. I give you this job. I pay you a fair wage. I tolerate a lot." "Ma'am?" Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. "I expect a certain amount of professionalism, of loyalty. I do not expect my staff to be fraternizing." "Fraternizing?" "Don't play dumb." Beth's voice snapped. "You saw what your daughter did. Running up to a man like Robert Walsh, a man of his importance. It was mortifying. It was improper. It made me look bad." Margaret stiffened. Her grandfather's pride, the O'Malley pride, flared in her chest. "My daughter was being kind." The man was alone. "The man was alone because he wanted to be alone," Beth shrieked, her composure cracking. "He is not one of us. And you are not one of them. You are here to scrub my floors. Your daughter is here to be quiet. You seem to have forgotten your place." "My place," Margaret said, her voice shaking with a sudden, cold anger, "is not beneath you. It is just different." Beth Peterson's eyes widened. She had never been spoken back to, not by a maid. "Oh," Beth said softly. It was a dangerous sound. "I see. You have a lot of pride, don't you? From that father of yours, the war hero." She said the words with a sneer. "You leave my father out of this," Margaret said, taking a step back. "I think not." Beth set her coffee cup down with a sharp click. "I think you should go to the study, my husband's desk. There's a small silver frame there. It has a picture of my Chloe when she was a baby. I'd like you to polish it." Margaret was confused by the sudden change of subject. "Yes, ma'am." The study. She walked down the hall to the dark wood-paneled room. She went to the heavy mahogany desk. She looked for the silver frame. It was not there. She checked the bookshelf. She looked on the side tables. It was gone. "Are you looking for something?" Margaret spun around. Beth Peterson was leaning in the doorway, a cruel, triumphant smile on her face. "The frame," Margaret said. "The silver frame with Chloe. It's not here." "I know," Beth said. "I'm sure it's hard to find time to clean when you are so busy. Perhaps you were going to take it. To pay for a new party dress for Emily?" The world tilted. Margaret felt the floor drop out from under her. "What?" "Number. I would never. I didn't. It was my grandmother's." Beth lied, her voice filling with false tears. "Solid silver. It's been in my family for years. And now, it's gone. After your performance." Last night. Mrs. Peterson, I swear to you, Margaret begged, her pride vanishing, replaced by raw panic. I did not take it. I would never steal. That's what they all say. Beth's face hardened. I cannot have a thief in my house. I cannot have someone I don't trust around my family. You're firing me? Margaret's voice broke. But you know I didn't take it. I know that I am missing a valuable heirloom. And I know that you were the only one in this room. Beth walked to the front door and opened it. The cold November air rushed in. Please, Margaret whispered. I have a child. It's almost Christmas. That is not my concern, Beth said, her voice flat. Your final paycheck will be mailed to you, minus, of course, the cost of the frame. You can't. Get out of my house. Margaret looked at the woman. She saw no path for appeal. She saw no mercy. There was only a black wall of spite. Numb, Margaret walked past her. She stepped out into the cold. The heavy front door clicked shut behind her. Margaret stood on the pristine sidewalk, surrounded by manicured lawns and silent, empty mansions. She had no job. She had been accused of theft. She had no money for rent. She was the daughter of a hero, and she had never felt so defeated. She put her head down and began the long, cold walk home. Miles away, in the quiet of the Walsh Tower, Robert's phone rang. It was his head of security. George, what do you have? Robert said, swiveling his chair to look at the city. I have it, sir. It was simple. The school records listed Emily's full name, Emily O'Malley. Her mother is Margaret O'Malley. O'Malley, Robert repeated. The name felt familiar, solid. Yes, sir. And that's where it gets interesting. I ran the name Margaret O'Malley and grandfather, and war hero as you asked. I cross-referenced it with local service records. George paused. Sir, are you familiar with Colonel Michael O'Malley? Robert sat up straight. Iron Mike O'Malley, the 101st? The very same, George said, his voice shaded with respect. Medal of Honor recipient, Silver Star, 2 Purple Hearts. He led the charge at the Battle of Eagle's Perch, saved his entire battalion. He's a legend. He passed away 5 years ago. Robert stared at the phone. He knew the name. Every businessman who dealt with the Department of Defense knew that name. Michael O'Malley was a legend not just for his bravery, but for his unbreakable integrity. He had been offered fortunes to sit on the boards of defense contractors. He had refused them all. He had lived and died in a small house on the poor side of town. He's Emily's grandfather, Robert said. It wasn't a question. He is. Margaret is his only child. It appears her husband, Emily's father, was also in the service. He died in a training accident before Emily was born. Robert closed his eyes. The picture was becoming clear. This was not just a maid and her child. This was the family of a true American hero. A hero's widow and a hero's daughter. Left to be humiliated by women like Beth Peterson. A cold, precise anger, the kind Robert usually reserved for hostile takeovers, began to build in his chest. George, Robert said, I have a new task for you. I want to know about Margaret's employment. I want to know about Beth Peterson. I want to know everything. Right away, sir. And George? Find me that silver frame. Margaret's feet were numb. The cold from the sidewalk had seeped through the thin soles of her shoes. It was a 3-mile walk from the Petersons' mansion to her apartment. Each step was a tiny, sharp impact. She did not cry. She was too scared to cry. She saw the faces of other people on the street. A mailman, a woman pushing a stroller. They all looked normal. Their lives were not falling apart. A thief. Mrs. Peterson had called her a thief. The word echoed in her head, louder than the traffic. It was a stain. A dirty, permanent mark. She thought of her father, Colonel Michael O'Malley. He had a glass case in his old den filled with medals. On his uniform, every crease was perfect. He was a man of absolute, frightening honor. Your name is all you have, Margaret, he used to tell her. Don't you ever let anyone put dirt on it. Now dirt was all she felt. She had failed him. She had failed Emily. What would she tell her? Honey, we can't buy food this week because a rich woman lied. We have to move because I lost my job? She reached her apartment complex. The building was old, the brickwork crumbling, but it was home. It was her tiny, safe box in the world, and now she might lose it. She let herself into her apartment. 11:34 a.m. It was quiet. Emily was still at school, safe in her classroom, unaware. Margaret walked to the kitchen and stood by the sink. She looked at the crayon drawing Emily had made of the dance. The tall stick man and the small stick girl, smiling. She had allowed her daughter to be brave. She had allowed her to talk to the big, powerful ship. And the ship's wave had come, just as she'd feared, and it had sunk her. The tears finally came. They were not loud. They were silent, hot tears of shame and terror. She sank into a kitchen chair, put her head in her hands, and for the first time since her father died, Margaret O'Malley felt truly, hopelessly alone. George. Sir, I'm here. Robert Walsh was in his office, but he was not looking at the city. He was looking at a framed photograph on his desk. It was of him and his wife Claire on a boat. They were smiling. It was before she got sick. We have a problem, George said. His voice was flat, professional. Tell me, Robert said. Our man across from the Peterson residence reported Margaret O'Malley left at 8:52 a.m. She was distressed, crying. She did not take her car. She walked. That's not her pattern. Robert's knuckles whitened on the edge of his desk. Go on. I took the liberty of activating a digital surveillance. Mrs. Peterson's home is a smart house. Her security system is very advanced. It's also very poorly encrypted. George, Robert said, get to the point. Mrs. Peterson fired Margaret O'Malley. The accusation was theft, a silver picture frame valued at $500. Robert said nothing. The silence in the office was heavy. And did she take it? Robert finally asked. He hated the question. He hated that the world made him ask it. No, sir. George's voice was firm. I have the footage from the home's internal cameras. Mrs. Peterson took the frame from the study desk herself last night, after her party. She hid it in her own walk-in closet. At 8:45 a.m., she instructed Ms. O'Malley to polish the frame. At 8:51 a.m., she discovered it was missing and fired her. Robert leaned back in his chair. He felt a profound, freezing calm. It was the feeling he got before he ruined a competitor. It was an anger so pure it was almost peaceful. She planned it, Robert said. It appears so, sir. It was retaliation for the dance. For the dance, Robert repeated. He thought of Emily's small, brave face. He thought of her pride in her grandfather, Iron Mike O'Malley, a man who had faced bullets and bombs. His daughter and granddaughter were being destroyed by spite. Sir? George waited. He knew this was more than a business matter now. What else, George? Margaret O'Malley has $112 in her checking account. Rent is due in 8 days. She's on a month-to-month lease. An eviction notice would give her 10 days. She has no other family. No support structure. She is, by all definitions, trapped. Robert looked at the photo of his wife. Claire had been a volunteer at a shelter. She had always fought for people who were trapped. Use your power for good, Rob, she had always said. Don't just be rich. Be worthy of it. He had not been worthy. Not for a long time. Okay, Robert said. His voice was different. The fog of grief he had lived in for 2 years was gone. In its place was sharp, clear purpose. George, I want you to find the name of the bank that holds the mortgage on the Petersons' house. Sir? George was surprised. That's easy. It's First National. Good, Robert said. I also own a bank, don't I, George? Yes, sir. Walsh Financial. You own all of it. I want you to buy that mortgage. Today. I don't care what it costs. I want to be Tom Peterson's banker by 5 o'clock. That, yes, sir. It's a large note, but yes, it can be done. What's the second step? You're going to find out which charity event Mrs. Peterson is chairing this Christmas. She seems the type. I want to know the venue, the guest list, and who is funding it. I'll have it in an hour, George said. Good. And George, one last thing. Sir? Get a car to Margaret O'Malley's apartment. A very nice, unmarked car, and have a driver wait. I don't want her or her daughter walking anywhere. Have him be invisible, but have him be there. In case they need to go. To a hospital. To a grocery store. They are not to be stranded. A shadow car. Yes, sir. She is the daughter of Michael O'Malley, Robert said, more to himself than to George. She will not be treated like a thief. She will not be abandoned. He hung up the phone. He stood up and walked to the window. The city looked different. It was not just a collection of assets anymore. It was a place where things happened, good things and terrible things. She called her a thief, he whispered. He thought about his own company, Walsh Logistics. His slogan was, "We move the world." He smiled. It was a cold, thin smile. Let's see just how fast we can move it, he said. It was 3 hours before Emily's bus was due to drop her off. 3 hours for Margaret to sit in her own apartment, which now felt like a cold, unfamiliar box. The label thief was a physical weight. It pressed on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She went to her bedroom and pulled an old metal lockbox from under her bed. It was where she kept her important papers. Her father's discharge papers, Emily's birth certificate, her checkbook. She opened the checkbook. The balance was $112.48. Her paycheck from Mrs. Peterson was not due for another week, and now it would be docked. The silver frame. A lie. She looked at the small pile of bills on her dresser. The rent, $650, due in 8 days. The electric bill, $78, due in 5 days. Her phone bill, $45. She did the math. It was simple. It was brutal. It was impossible. She would have to go to the food pantry. The thought made her stomach clench with shame. Her father had been a colonel. He had dined with generals. She was his daughter, and she was going to have to ask for a can of beans. She was so wrapped in her panic that she almost missed the sound. A quiet knock on her apartment door. Margaret froze. She was not expecting anyone. Her neighbor, Mrs. Gable, had her own key. She crept to the door and looked through the peephole. No one. She frowned. She opened the door a crack. The hallway was empty, but sitting on her doormat was a simple brown grocery bag. Her heart hammered. Was this a mistake? Did a neighbor drop their groceries? She looked left. She looked right. Nothing. She pulled the bag inside and locked the deadbolt, her hands shaking. She set the bag on her small kitchen table. Inside, there was no note. There was a fresh, warm roasted chicken. There was a loaf of bread, a bag of apples, a carton of milk, a container of fresh pasta salad, and a small, foil-wrapped package of chocolate chip cookies. It was enough food for 3 days. Margaret backed away from the bag as if it were a snake. Where had this come from? She thought of Mrs. Peterson. Was this a new kind of cruelty? A trap? Number. This was not Beth Peterson's style. This was kind. She ran back to the peephole and stared through it. The hallway was empty. But then she saw, through the thin curtains of her living room window, a car. It was parked across the street, a plain, black sedan. It had no markings. It just sat there. It was not there this morning. She watched it for a long, long time. The car did not move. No one got in. No one got out. It was just watching, protecting. She did not know what to think. She felt a strange, new feeling mixing with the panic. It was confusion. At 3:15 p.m., Emily burst through the door, her cheeks red from the cold, her backpack heavy. "Mama, I got an A on my spelling test." Margaret hugged her daughter, burying her face in Emily's blonde hair. She held on for a beat too long. "Mama, you're squishing me." Emily laughed. "I'm sorry, sweetie. I'm just so proud." Margaret forced a smile. Emily's eyes immediately went to the kitchen table. "Wow, did you go shopping? Is that chicken?" Margaret's smile faltered. "Yes, it's a surprise. A good surprise. I'm starving." Emily dropped her bag and ran to the table. "Can I have a cookie?" "After you have some chicken." They sat at the small table. Emily ate happily, chattering about her day. She talked about her art project. She talked about a boy named Sam who pulled her hair. "And guess what?" Emily said, her mouth full of bread. "Chloe Peterson was in a bad mood today." Margaret stopped, a piece of chicken halfway to her mouth. "Oh?" "Yeah. She told everyone her mom was going to get a new maid. She said the old one was no good." Margaret put her fork down. The food tasted like ash. "Emily?" she said, her voice quiet. Emily looked up. She saw her mother's face. The fake smile was gone. "Mama? What's wrong?" "Honey, I won't be going back to Mrs. Peterson's house." Emily's face scrunched in confusion. "Why? Did you get a new job?" "No, Mrs. Peterson. She let me go." "She fired you?" Emily knew the word. "Like on TV?" "Yes, like on TV. But why? Did you break something?" Margaret took a deep breath. She looked at her daughter. She saw her father's eyes. Honest. Brave. She would not lie. "No, sweetie. I didn't do anything. She said I took something, a picture frame, but I didn't." Emily's happy expression dissolved. "She called you a liar?" "Yes. But that's not true. You don't lie. You don't steal. She's the one who's lying." Emily's voice was rising. She was her grandfather's granddaughter. She had a fierce, sudden sense of justice. "I know," Margaret said, her own tears welling up. "But she's the boss. So, I don't have a job anymore." Emily was quiet. She pushed her plate away. The cookies were forgotten. "Is it because of the dance?" Emily asked, her voice a tiny whisper. Margaret's heart broke. "What? No, baby, don't you ever think that." "But she was mad at the dance," Emily insisted. "She looked at me. And you. She looked mean." "It doesn't matter, Emily. This is not your fault. It is not." "So what happens?" Emily asked. "What do we do?" Margaret looked at the bills on her dresser. She looked at the anonymous bag of food. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know." In the Walsh Tower, the lights of the city had come on, creating a carpet of diamonds below. George stood in Robert's office. He held a thin tablet. "It's done, sir," George said. "We own the note." As of 4:32 p.m., Walsh Financial is the primary lien holder on the Petersons' estate. Robert nodded. He was standing in front of his window, his back to the room. "And the charity?" "The Starbright Children's Foundation annual gala. It's in 1 week. Beth Peterson is the chairwoman. It's her main social event of the year. She's raised over $100,000. "Good," Robert said. "She's raised it, but she hasn't received it all yet." "Pledges." "Exactly, sir." "And the main corporate sponsor?" George allowed himself a small, grim smile. "It's a subsidiary of Walsh Logistics." Robert turned around. "She's been using my money to fund her party." "Yes, sir. She's been sending fawning letters to our foundation's vice president for months. He's been approving it as a standard community donation. $50,000. "Cancel it," Robert said. "Sir? Cancel the donation. I want a letter sent from our VP. Due to unforeseen budgetary reallocations, we must regretfully pull our funding. I want it sent to her house, tonight." George's eyebrows rose. "That will gut her event, sir. She'll be humiliated. She'll be short." Yes, Robert said. She will. Robert walked to his desk. And George. Send another grocery bag. Tomorrow. Same time. Same way. And pay her electric bill. George was stunned. Pay her, sir, how? You're my head of security, George. You're a wizard. You have her account number. Use an anonymous third-party transfer. A utility grant from a charity that doesn't exist. I don't care. Just get it done. And her rent. Pay it. 3 months in advance. That's generous, sir. It's not generous, Robert snapped. It's necessary. She's the daughter of a man who saved a battalion. She will not be evicted because of a spiteful, jealous woman. We are going to build a wall around her. A wall of iron. She won't even see it. But it will be there. And the car? The shadow car? It stays, Robert said. It stays until this is done. The next day, Margaret woke up to an email. It was not a job offer. It was a notification from her electric company. Dear customer, your account has been paid in full by a grant from the Community Neighbors Fund. Your balance is $0.00. Margaret stared at it. She printed it out, her hands shaking as if the paper would make it real. Community Neighbors Fund? She had never heard of it. She was still staring at it when the mailman came. He slipped the day's mail through the slot in her door. She went to get it, expecting more bills. She found a single, crisp, white envelope. It was from her apartment's management company. She tore it open, her heart in her throat. Was it an eviction notice? It was a receipt. Tenant, Margaret O'Malley. Payment received, $1,950. Status, paid in full. December, January, February. Thank you. Margaret dropped the paper. She stumbled back and sat hard on her couch. This was not happening. This was not real. 3 months' rent, her electric bill, the food. This was not kindness. It was something else. It was an invasion. It was a message. But from who? She thought of the black car, still parked across the street. It was there when she woke up. A new kind of terror, cold and sharp, replaced her panic. She was not in control. Someone was pulling strings. Someone was watching her, playing a game with her. Was this Mrs. Peterson? Was this some twisted way to prove Margaret was unstable? That she was taking money from strange places? She grabbed her phone and dialed the management company. Yes, hi. This is Margaret O'Malley in 2B, she said, her voice strained. I just got a receipt. It says my rent is paid. For 3 months. The woman on the other end was cheerful. Oh yes, Miss O'Malley. An absolute blessing, isn't it? A wire transfer came in this morning from a benefactor's trust. They wish to remain anonymous. You're all set until March. Happy holidays. An anonymous benefactor. Margaret hung up the phone. She went to her front door and locked the deadbolt. And the chain. She was a puppet. Someone was moving her. She felt more trapped than when she had no money at all. 8 blocks away, in a house of glass and white stone, Beth Peterson was also having a bad morning. She was sitting at her kitchen island in her silk robe when her laptop pinged. An email. It was from the Walsh Foundation. Dear Mrs. Peterson, she read aloud, a smile on her face. It was probably a letter confirming Mr. Walsh's personal attendance at her gala. Her smile vanished. Due to unforeseen budgetary reallocations, we must regretfully pull our funding, $50,000. What? She whispered. The coffee cup in her hand trembled. No, 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 no. $50,000 was not just a donation. It was the anchor. It paid for the ballroom at the Grand Hotel. It paid for the orchestra. It paid for the catering. Without it, her entire event. She grabbed her phone and dialed her contact at the foundation, a vice president she had charmed for months. It went straight to voicemail. He can't do this, she stammered. She tried his direct line. Voicemail. She tried his assistant. I'm sorry, Mrs. Peterson. Mr. Davies is in high-level meetings all day. He is unavailable. But the gala, The Starbright Gala. There's been a mistake. There is no mistake, Mrs. Peterson. The decision is final. Have a good day. The line clicked. Beth Peterson stared at her phone. Her heart was a cold, hammering stone in her chest. She was ruined. It was not about the children. It was not about the charity. It was her party. It was the one night of the year she was the most important woman in the city. And Robert Walsh had just gutted it. That Maid, she hissed, her mind making a desperate, illogical leap. This is somehow her fault. She must have said something to him. Ungrateful. Her phone rang. She snatched it, hoping it was the foundation, begging her forgiveness. It was her bank. First National. Mrs. Peterson? A cold, unfamiliar voice said. This is Mr. Kincaid from Walsh Financial. Walsh? Financial? I bank with First National. Not anymore, the man said. As of 5 p.m. yesterday, Walsh Financial acquired your mortgage note. We are your new lien holder. This is a courtesy call to inform you of a discrepancy. Your husband's business accounts seem highly leveraged. We're concerned about the loan-to-value ratio of your property. Beth stood up, knocking her coffee cup over. Brown liquid spilled across the white marble island. She didn't notice. What are you saying? We're saying, the voice continued, that given the new risk profile, we are exercising our right to call in the note. You have 30 days to pay the full balance, $4.7 million, or we begin foreclosure proceedings. The phone slipped from her hand. It clattered to the floor. Foreclosure. Robert Walsh. He wasn't just pulling a donation. He was taking her house. She sank to the floor, the spilled coffee soaking the hem of her silk robe. She had destroyed a maid over a silver frame. And the maid's dance partner, the quiet man in the gray sweater, was now taking everything. The week that followed was the strangest of Margaret's life. She did not leave her apartment. The black car remained. Every day, a bag of groceries appeared. She tried to find a job. She applied online to dozens of listings. No one called her back. She was a thief. The accusation, even without proof, was a ghost that followed her. Then, 3 days before the gala, a new package arrived. It was a large, flat black box. There was no note. Inside, on a bed of white tissue paper, were 2 dresses. One was a simple, elegant, dark blue velvet dress. It was her size. It was beautiful and modest. The other was a smaller, matching dress. Emily's size. At the bottom of the box was a single, thick, cream-colored envelope. The Starbright Children's Foundation, it read. Margaret opened it. The foundation is honored to invite Miss Margaret O'Malley and Miss Emily O'Malley as the daughter and granddaughter of Colonel Michael O'Malley to be our guests of honor at this year's gala. It included a time and a place. The Grand Hotel, 7 p.m. Margaret stared at the invitation. She looked at the dresses. Guests of honor? This was a nightmare, a confusing, terrifying play. Mama? Emily said, touching the soft velvet. Are we going to another party? I think so, honey. Is he going to be there? The sad man? Margaret finally understood. The groceries, the rent, the black car. It was not Mrs. Peterson. It was him, Robert Walsh. He was not trapping her. He was protecting her. And now he was inviting her. Yes, Emily, Margaret said, her voice shaking, but not with fear, with something else. I think he will be. The Grand Hotel ballroom was a sea of black ties and jewels. Beth Peterson stood by the entrance, her face a mask of plastic smiles. She had managed to save the gala. Barely. She had poured her own emergency savings into it, maxed out 2 credit cards. The orchestra was a 4-piece string quartet. The catering was cold appetizers. The rumors were flying that her husband was in financial trouble, that the Walsh Foundation had pulled out. Her social circle was avoiding her. She was toxic. She was checking the guest list, her hands trembling when she saw them. No! She gasped. Margaret O'Malley and her daughter walked into the ballroom. They were not dressed in a maid's uniform. They were dressed in beautiful, simple velvet. They looked dignified. "What are you doing here?" Beth hissed, rushing to them. "You are not on the list. Get out. Security." "I believe," a deep voice said, "they are with me." Robert Walsh stepped out from the crowd. He was not in a gray sweater. He was in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. He looked like the man who owned the city. He smiled, not at Beth, but at Emily. "Miss Emily," he said, "you look lovely. I see you're not wearing your dancing shoes." Emily giggled. "You're not wearing your sweater." "Beth," Robert said, his voice dropping, all humor gone. "I believe you know Miss O'Malley." Beth's face was white. "Mr. Walsh, this woman, she's a thief." The string quartet stopped. The room went silent. Everyone turned. "She stole from me," Beth cried, her voice cracking with desperation. "She's a common thief. I had to fire her." Margaret grabbed Emily's hand, her face crimson. She wanted to run. "A thief?" Robert said, his voice calm, but carrying across the entire room. "That's a very serious word. Did you file a police report, Beth?" I was going to. A silver frame. It was my grandmother's." "This one?" Robert said. George, his head of security, stepped forward. He was holding a clear plastic bag. Inside was a silver picture frame. "My security team," Robert said, "ran a full review of your home's security footage, as we do for all our major donation recipients. We found this in your closet, hidden in a boot box. You put it there at 11:43 p.m., the night of the dance." A collective gasp went through the room. Beth Peterson looked at the frame, then at Robert. Her mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. "You slandered this woman," Robert said, his voice ablade. "You fired her. You tried to ruin her. All because her daughter, a 10-year-old girl, showed me a moment of kindness, because she had the courage you will never have." He looked at Margaret. "Ms. O'Malley's father was Colonel Michael O'Malley. He saved a battalion. He was a hero. You are just a bully." Robert turned to the silent, watching crowd. "The Walsh Foundation is pulling all funding from this event, effective immediately. And as your banker, Mrs. Peterson." He let the words hang. "I'll be seeing you and your husband on Monday. We have a lot to discuss." Beth Peterson's perfect world, her social standing, her money, her house, it all evaporated in that single terrible moment. She turned and fled the ballroom, her face a ruin. The crowd began to whisper. Robert ignored them. He turned to Margaret. She was crying, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of relief. "Mr. Walsh," she whispered, "the groceries, the rent." "A hero's daughter should never have to worry about rent," Robert said softly. He looked around the room. "The Walsh Foundation needs good people, people with integrity, people like your father. I'm starting a new grant, the O'Malley Grant, for the families of veterans. It needs someone to run it, someone I can trust, someone with honor." He looked directly at Margaret. "I'm not offering you a handout, Ms. O'Malley. I'm offering you a job, a very difficult one. Will you accept?" Margaret stared at him, the billionaire who had just defended her, who had saved her, who saw her not as a maid, but as herself. "Yes," she said, her voice clear. "Yes, I will." Robert smiled, a real warm smile that reached his eyes. The sadness was still there, but it was not alone. Emily, who had been watching this all, tugged on his tuxedo jacket. "Sir?" she asked. "Yes, Emily? Can we dance now?" The music stopped. Robert looked at the string quartet, who were staring, frozen. He nodded to them. "Play," he said. The music started again, a slow, gentle waltz. Robert Walsh looked down at the small girl with the brave heart. "Miss Emily," he said, holding out his hand. "It would be my greatest honor." He took her hand, and in the middle of the grand ballroom, surrounded by the wealthiest people in the city, the billionaire and the maid's daughter began to dance. And this time, he knew exactly what he was doing. And with that dance, we'll leave Robert and Emily for now. I hope their story served as a small reminder that the simplest act of courage can change a life, and that kindness is the one thing that closes any distance. I'd love to know what you were doing while you were listening, perhaps winding down for the evening or taking a quiet break. Drop a line in the comments. I truly do read them all. If you want to make sure we cross paths again, hitting like and subscribing makes a huge difference. Your feedback is always welcome as we try to improve our stories. Thank you for spending this time with me.